chat. Let's get started. Let's see if this works. Does this work? Yeah, this works. Nope. We're still doing holiday stuff, I suppose. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be for educational purposes only. Nothing is intended to be taken as medical advice. If y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. Hello. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, I took a shower a little bit late. I pulled a muscle in my back when I was maybe doing a touch of the exercise. Haven't been doing Surya Namaskar as much as I should be. So that's on me. Yeah, welcome to 2023. I hope y'all are doing well. Let's try to make 2023 different from 2022. What do y'all say, chat? Does that sound good? Let's try to avoid once in a lifetime events happening like every month. Today is January 6th, and the U.S. has beat its prior record of going 6 days without a violent overthrow of our government. So good job, U.S. Here's to y'all. Here's to Americans. I guess the day isn't over yet. We did it. Woohoo! And yeah, so I had a good holiday, had some family visit, things like that. Stuff was fun. I think this is kind of too much light. No? Is that too much? No, it's okay. Whatever. I also had some time to think, which I know is strange, but I like to spend some time thinking. And so I've been thinking about like what we want to do at HG over 2023. Like, what are we doing here, chat? Like, what's going on? You know, like we started showing up, we did some interviews, we talked to some people. We discovered that there were problems in the world. We tried to help those fix those problems in particular ways. We've also been meeting with a lot of clinicians recently at different institutions, primarily in the United States, but also internationally, and just sort of like talking to them about what they're struggling with. These are primarily like mental health clinicians. So like, you know, what are the challenges that they face? What are the challenges that y'all face? And I've just been thinking about that stuff. So one thing that I wanted to kind of talk about. So today we're going to be doing a call-in stream, but today's call-in stream is going to be a little bit different. So I just wanted to share with y'all a little bit about how we do things at HG. So there are problems in the world, right? We sort of get that. And so then the question becomes, okay, like how do you fix a problem in the world? So there are kind of two approaches. One is that you're an expert, right? So you like become an expert about it, and then you sort of figure out this is what I believe is going to be successful. And that's kind of like the academic route, and it's a good route. But I think one thing that I've always found is really, really, really important is, and the way that I kind of work is I actually like to ask people, right? So like, what's the challenge that you face? Like help me understand like why you're struggling and what's hard in life. And this is where I think at some point, especially if you look at like academic medicine, and there are good reasons for this, especially in psychiatry and in psychotherapy and stuff, will sometimes like form conclusions, right? So like a clinician will form, like Freud like started talking, well, he didn't really talk to people, he listened to people. And then he started like forming theories. And then like he said, okay, this is what's going on. And one of the key things about some of the experts in mental health, psychology, et cetera, is that their answers come from their own expertise, right? So a patient isn't coming in and saying, I have a superego, id, and an ego. These are my conflicts. It's not kind of from the patient, it's from the expert. But one of the things that I've kind of noticed is that I think so here are a couple things I've noticed. One is that the number of psychiatric diagnoses that people are accumulating seems to be going up. So like several years ago, I feel like there was, you know, people would be like, oh yeah, you know, I have an anxiety disorder. But now it's like just the more people I talk to, it's like, yeah, I'm diagnosed with depression, anxiety. That's become one thing, by the way. So I have depression, anxiety, I have ADHD, I'm on the spectrum, you know, like I'm bipolar. I have depression, anxiety, bipolar, ADHD. So something weird is going on. The other thing that I sort of noticed is that as we're looking at research on mental health and mental illness, we're starting to see some really interesting blips that have caused me to really rethink our system of diagnosis. So just to give you all an example. So there was this big paper that came out in 2022 about mood disorders, especially like major depressive disorder, not being due to a neurochemical imbalance. Okay, so this created some waves. Honestly, if you're well trained in psychiatry, I don't think this was really a surprise to any of us. Like we sort of kind of knew that. It's a simplistic view, but then there's also some other really interesting bits of data. So one piece of data that I ran across, which was really interesting, is that 50% of men who commit suicide may not be mentally ill, which is like kind of interesting, right? And then the other thing, like another piece of research that I was looking at, which I've cited a couple of times, is that some of these behavioral addictions correlate with things that don't have to do with mental illness. So it's a wow statistic. So I'm looking into like the validity of that, but there's one study that suggests that potentially people who commit suicide aren't mentally ill. And so the last thing that I kind of was like looking at is what leads to pornography addiction. So this is a study that we've talked about a fair amount. But the really interesting thing is that if you look at a lot of mental illness, like it correlates with non-mental illness parts of people's lives. So, for example, isolation and loneliness correlate with suicidality, and that's kind of interesting, right? So if you look at what correlates with suicidality is not, it correlates a little bit, but the standout correlations for suicidality are not severity of mental illness, which like everyone just sort of assumes, right? So if you're the more severely mental, if you've got really bad major depressive disorder, really bad bipolar disorder, then the likelihood that you'll kill yourself is higher. But we're seeing all kinds of interesting data about this, which is that, actually like it's loneliness that correlates with suicidality. It's meaninglessness that correlates with pornography addiction. There's even some really interesting, I saw a study recently that this is interesting. If you look at teenagers, suicide amongst teenagers dropped by 20% in 2020. And there's been an uptick of suicide in teenagers over the last 6 months. And so some researchers, this is really interesting. Some researchers are trying to figure out, wait, hold on a second. Why was suicide better for about a year and a half, and now it's getting worse again? And they did some really interesting analysis, and they looked at Google Trends data. So they looked at what people will Google searching. And it turns out that one of the key factors that correlates with teen suicide is bullying. And so what happened is when all the schools shut down and kids were forced to stay at home, they stopped getting bullied. And now that kids are going back to school, the bullying has resumed. And so my point is that if we're like, the more that we learn about the more that we learn about the problems people face, I'm seeing more and more and more data that the problems that people face aren't necessarily due to mental illness. That fixing mental illness is not going to fix everything in your life. So this is a hunch that we had, which is part of the reason that we started a coaching program and things like that. And so this is what's kind of interesting, right? So we'll see statistically significant improvements in things like mood, anxiety, worry, confidence in our coaching program. And that's kind of interesting. And for a long time, people were really confused about that. They're like, wait a second, if this helps my depression, doesn't make it a treatment? No, actually. So I actually think that the trend that we're seeing in the data is that mental health, first of all, is more than mental illness. Secondly, that improving your mental health, including making progress with mental illness, is more than just engaging in mental health treatment. So this is something that I saw as a psychiatrist, where it's like, I had two kinds of patients, right? I had the patient that came in, had social anxiety, started a medication, maybe did some psychotherapy, and didn't really make changes in their life between appointments. So they would see me for 1 hour a week. I'd prescribe medication. We'd do some of the good old psychotherapy. And like their day-to-day life stayed the same. And then I had some patients who did the psychotherapy, did the medication, did meditation. But then they started making changes in between appointments. So they started actually like tackling their social anxiety. So I had one person who was, afraid of like felt socially anxious, but wanted to get a summer job. This was a college student. And so we talked a little bit about, okay, like, let's think about what you're afraid of if you walk in and you ask for a job application. And then they were like, I think that someone will be, I'm bothering them and like things like that. And so we like worked through that stuff. And then like one person would just talk about it and not doing anything. And another person would actually like in between our appointments, stop in at 3 or 4 different places and ask for job applications. And what I tended to see was that there was a big clinical difference in terms of like the rate at which people got better. And then I started to wonder, okay, hold on a second. If mental health is more than mental illness or treating mental illness, then what about that other piece? And there's more and more data that's kind of coming up about loneliness, about confidence, about purpose, about meaning, even some of the stuff that we talked about last year about post-traumatic growth. So this is also kind of interesting where like you can look at people who are in similar traumatic experiences, right? So this is like genocide or war or things like that. And as you have these war refugees who flee a country, some of them develop PTSD and some of them don't. And then it's kind of interesting because you're like, wait a second, like the trauma was the same. The traumatic event is similar between all of these people. What's the difference between whether you develop PTSD or, paradoxically, whether this actually makes you a stronger person? And so there's a lot of research now on post-traumatic growth, which once again, it seems like the key thing is making meaning of the trauma. So people who are able to derive some sense of meaning can actually like take a negative experience and turn it into a positive. And people who aren't able to do that take a negative experience and turn it into a prolonged negative experience. PTSD. So so it was nice to actually take a break and like not have to worry about, okay, today I'm going to be lecturing on this or whatever. Like, and I love doing that stuff, but I think that we need to reshape the way that we understand the challenges that we face. And we need to really think from the ground up instead of starting with existing models like once a week psychotherapy, medication to improve your mood, things like that. We really need to start like thinking from scratch about what is this problem? What are all the possible solutions? What are the different ways that we can tackle this stuff? And so one thing that I kind of realized is that for most of the time when I stream, I'm here for you, right? Like you're the beneficiary. But today, what I'd like to do, we're going to do a call-in stream today. But today, what I want to do is actually a little bit different. So today, we're going to be talking to people from our community about why it's hard finding purpose. And this is where like we're here to learn, right? So like sometimes people will call and they'll be like, Dr. K, help me find purpose. And I'll be like, all right, let's see what we can do to help you find purpose. I'm not saying that I'm not going to try to help people today. But I think what I realized is like as a community, if we're like talking about 2023 and Healthy Gamer, we've said it a lot, is it's way more than Dr. K, and it really is. If you look at like the community that we've built, things like Right in the Fields, like things like Social Sandbox, things like Ask a Coach, like even our coaches, right, are pulled from our community. These are y'all who decided, hey, like I've really benefited from some of this stuff. I want to help people in this way. So they're like dedicated, they're hardworking. They go through all kinds of different like educational modules and skills training and all this kind of stuff. And so like they're fantastic and they achieve outcomes that I imagine would terrify therapists because anyway, that's a conversation for a different day. So their outcomes are good. And why is that? I think it's because we're approaching things in a slightly different way. So today what I want to do is like, there are big picture problems that I see in our community. These are things like, how do I find purpose? And if you really think about it, this problem trickles down into so many different questions. Should I stay in my job or should I quit my job? Should I move or not move? Should I do this or should I do this? I don't enjoy my job every day. I'm dealing with burnout, all this kind of crap. But it all comes back to purpose. There are also other big ticket issues which we're dealing with. Gender dynamics, right? That's a huge one in our community. Like how to change our behavior. There are big things that we're dealing with. And so I think our approach at Healthy Gamer is, first of all, to not assume that we're omniscient from the beginning. So today we're going to be talking to people, and hopefully we'll discover why people struggle with purpose. And what we're going to try to do is, once we understand the problems that y'all face, we're going to spend a fair amount of 2023 trying to figure out how to help those people. And this is going to be like a community effort, right? So y'all are going to tell us, hey, here's all the progress we've made through participating in HE. Here's where we're still like missing stuff, right? And then like we're going to like do a bunch of research, and we're going to, I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but it starts with sort of figuring out, okay, like how are we going to help you find purpose in 2023? Right? Okay. So let's get started. All right, Tech Teller.
Ready?
Let's go. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good.
And what do you go by?
I usually go online. I usually go by Axe.
Axe. Okay, nice to meet you, Axe.
Nice to meet you.
So I want to. Is it okay if we talk a little bit about why it's hard to find purpose?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me what makes it hard to find purpose.
So when I was looking at the question posted in the Discord earlier, my take on it was that it's not that difficult to find purpose, but it's in this day and age it's a bit more difficult to avoid being discouraged from pursuing a purpose or pursuing something that
That's fascinating, Axe. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I was talking to someone about their kids' anxiety, and I realized that in a world where we have access to the internet and we have access and where a lot of purpose or a lot of interest is derived from online content, it wouldn't be surprising to see that people find it discouraging or intimidating to pursue those interests, since most of the content that we're exposed to depicts that content at its peak, at a point very close to maximum mastery, without depicting the learning curve to reach it, the struggle, effort, and failure that has to be overcome to reach that point. So then people will get initially excited by whatever that gets them into the subject, but then when they actually start doing it or try to pursue it, they find obstacles that they had never thought would be there and find themselves discouraged.
I see. So if I'm hearing you, let me just make sure I understand, Axe. So you're kind of saying that finding purpose, first of all, isn't the hard part, and that in today's day and age, there's a lot of content out there that makes it look easy, right? So you can get excited about something, and then the content that kind of floats to the top is not someone struggling and failing and depicting the learning curve. The content at the top that we get exposed to is people already being mastery. So you only see the last leg of the race. You don't see all the effort that they've gone through. And then that creates an expectation that, oh, this maybe is easy. And then when people try to actually do it, the reality that they're confronted with is quite different from what they've been sold.
Well, I'm not sure if the content makes everything look easy or makes people expect not to have difficulty in achieving that level of mastery, but in many cases, 95% of cases, you don't really see what the challenges are. So then you find yourself in a position where you're thinking, okay, I like the view from the top, but is the way to there with that pursuit?
Yeah, and how does someone answer that question?
Um, in my opinion, I don't think you can answer the question. I don't think you can say, "Oh, look, okay, so I've finally found the path of least resistance. Finally found the thing where either the challenges to reach the top are not great enough for me to get discouraged, or I found a path where my innate talents or my whatever allows me to reach the top without much effort." I think it's more, to make another mountain simile or comparison. It's more about finding the purpose where you which you do not pursue for the sake of what the view from the top looks like, but which you pursue because you enjoy the pursuit of it.
Okay,
So in
so
the case
so
of a job, yeah,
yeah, so what I'm kind of here, like, so I'm also hearing kind of this question of, is it worth it, which is a really common question, right? I'll hear that a lot, which is the grind worth the view from the top? And then
yeah,
I'm also kind of hearing you say, though, that sometimes people look for the easiest path forward, or the one that
yep.
isn't too difficult, to where that is it worth it becomes easy, right? Because it's not that hard to actually advance. But I'm also kind of hearing you say that the real goal is, and maybe I'm, so correct me if I'm wrong. The real goal is to find something where it's the climbing to the top of the mountain part that's actually pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, well, so I try to look at things and simplify the problems I deal with. And when thinking about this particular issue, I decided, okay, like I'll just assume that there's no success without effort and struggle. So then, so the difficult parts are impossible to remove. So then, how do I, put myself in a position where I can pursue something and not hate every second of it up until right before the reaching the top.
So, and can you tell me
So,
a little bit about what your journey has been like in your life and where you are with finding purpose?
well, in my particular case, to simplify, I started out developing a lot of hobbies, and I would say that I started out being what one would call a gifted kid, because I found it easy to grasp the basic knowledge or the basic skills of almost anything. But then as soon as I would hit something that would make the whole thing look difficult or that would require the least bit of effort, I would suddenly not like want to quit or feel like this is too difficult to pursue. I just suddenly felt like I had lost the enjoyment of the thing. And I
Hmm.
found that really weird, because like, why am I no longer enjoying this thing, specifically at the point at which it becomes difficult?
And what was the answer you came up with?
The answer I came up with was just keep going. And like, the moment when I realized that I can't keep going like that was when I almost quit the latest sport that I had begun doing. Because obviously, especially in the case of sports, you look online, you see the stunts, you see the videos, and obviously that's the MVP plays, so to speak, and you're like, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. And then you actually get into doing the sport. It happens to be an extreme sport. It's mountain biking. You get to actually doing it, and you realize, wow, this is scary beyond belief. And I'm not, and I'm just trying to get down the mountain without tricks or anything, without, you know, making it impressive for others or making it impressive for myself. I'm just trying to survive down this path. Um, and I then realized, okay, screw the videos. Do you enjoy going down the mountain? Do you enjoy, you know, the feeling of that route passing under your bike? And do you enjoy the feeling of successfully getting at the bottom? If even if by like global standards you're not doing anything even close to special. And I was like, yeah, I do enjoy that. So I kept doing it for that specifically.
So I'm hearing that you started off being attracted to something based on something that maybe you saw in a video and you were like, wow, this looks fun, this looks cool. And
Yep.
then through some amount of introspection and experimentation, you basically concluded that, like, as you said, screw the video, right? You're not trying to duplicate what you saw, but in terms of your own experience, whether you enjoy something or not. And
Yeah. Well, it's maybe one day I'll get to the point where I can do the things that I saw in the video, but realistically speaking, I'm at the beginning. It's normal for me to be at the beginning. It's normal for me to be scared about the beginning and about these small challenges in front of me. And maybe one day I'll be able to achieve, you know, something that I saw online.
okay. And so do you okay, so it sounds like, let me just kind of summarize. So you were originally saying you don't think it's hard to find purpose, but that after you found it, it's very easy to get discouraged. And one of the reasons it's very easy to get discouraged is because people, you'll see something online and they don't show the learning curve. They just show the view from the top. And so you can aspire from the view from the top, but then as you start to engage in the activity, like, you discover that the reality of it is quite different from what you saw on YouTube. And that
Yep.
this isn't fun and exciting. This is actually, like, absolutely terrifying and you could die at any moment. And
Yeah.
then you sort of discarded your impression of, you kind of discarded the original goal that you were chasing after and instead decided to just focus on your own experience of a particular thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Anything else you want to add, Axe?
It's much in the same way. Um, Looking at about the reaction that because this is basically the subject of my whole idea regarding purpose and finding it. And well, I mean, you know, you do have to define purpose. Is it something you want to, you know, make do as a job, or is it more uh, a bigger thing about, oh, I want to do good for the world? But as far as, you know, simple things, personal things, uh, the reaction I've been getting, I've been seeing in a lot of people is, wow, this, what, that's impossible, or that's insane, or that's, you know, too dangerous to do. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this guy is telling me that what I'm doing with a bike on a mountain is too dangerous to do, while he works in a very high power uh, electrical grid connection, joining and disjoining 10,000 volt connectors on a daily basis. So, like, yeah, sure, if you start out thinking it's difficult and it's not worth doing, and then from in my opinion, before you know it, before you even notice it, you end up doing things that people, ordinary people, would see as almost the same level as the videos, as the
Hmm.
point of mastery. It's like, I like to call it a superpower, because people will look at it and like, I would never have the courage to do that.
Interesting.
So just keep on keeping on, and eventually you will reach a point where, yeah, you're doing pretty well.
Cool. Thank you very much for sharing your perspective, Ax. I think it's really interesting to think a little bit about this idea that finding the purpose isn't the hard part. It's dealing with being discouraged after you start walking your journey. That's the difficult thing. So thanks a lot, man.
You're very welcome, and thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Just 1 second before we jump into the next one. So I saw a pretty interesting question in chat, which was, why is everyone a gifted kid? Which is a really great question. So I think what we see in our community is that we do have a lot of gifted kids. And why is that? So we made a video some time ago about how gifted kids are actually special needs kids. And I think this is not something that has been well acknowledged on the whole in our educational system. That if you think about a child who has a very high IQ, that school is actually like all about moving at a pace that leaves no one behind. It's not about moving at a pace that is tailored to an individual. So I think that one of the reasons that everyone here is a gifted kid is because we're one of the communities that actually kind of acknowledges that, and we encourage people to push themselves, right, at the rate at which they're capable of. So case in point, this guy was just saying, you know, people are looking at what I do and they say that's too dangerous. And I have no idea if, I mean, hopefully what they're doing is they're mountain biking in a way that's like safe and stuff like that. But this is kind of my point, is that a lot of us are judged based on like the average, right? So people will say, don't do that. Like, that's crazy, you know? And I think part of the reason that we do actually have a lot of gifted kids in our communities because we're one of the places that like we kind of acknowledge that that comes with challenges. It's not actually straight advantages. And then a lot of the gifted kids, a lot of what we actually offer is like the stuff that the gifted kids missed out on. So if you think about the problem of a gifted kid, it's that things are easy, things are easy, things are easy. Therefore, I don't build up the habits necessary to deal with challenges. Because I never learn how to deal with challenges because I'm never given a minor challenge. What happens is gifted kids hit a wall. And once you hit that wall, then you don't have the necessary infrastructure, discipline. You start to view yourself as lazy. Why are gifted kids, generally speaking, lazy? Well, what determines whether they're lazy or not is whether they've had graduated challenges. And they've learned how to overcome those challenges. And so I think that's like, it's a really great question. Why is everyone a gifted? I think it's because we're one of the few places that actually helps gifted kids who have failed to launch try to put things back together. One other quick thing that I just wanted to let y'all know. So we actually, in terms of finding purpose, so this is something that's somewhat of an individual journey, and we're not saying that we have all the answers here. And in fact, one of the key things is that I don't know how much of it is finding an answer or giving an answer to someone. But we do have a very, very short term, we've got a 24-hour promotion that's going on our Discord, where if y'all are interested in trying out coaching, there's a code that you guys can find on Discord. It's sort of like community first kind of thing. So it's not really open to the general public, but y'all can, if y'all have been curious about trying out coaching, and you can sort of try it risk-free right now, and you can find that on Discord. Okay? And it's up for 24 hours. So it's just like HG folks only. If y'all have been kind of on the fence and want to give it a shot, you're more than welcome to try. All right, let's do the next caller. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, what's up, man?
Very good. I'm very good. How about you?
I'm doing well. What do you go by?
Tom.
Tom. Nice to meet you, Tom.
We already talked a few. Nice to meet you again.
It's nice to meet you again, too. When did we talk?
I think we talked in July last year.
Okay. Yeah, your voice sounds a little bit familiar.
Okay. Cool.
So can you tell me a little bit, Tom, about why it's hard to find purpose?
What I found at least on my process or path in finding purpose, was that there is a lack of inward look, and I think it's difficult to have a good conversation and communication with ourselves. I think that it's not common for people to like just listen uh, to the thoughts and ideas, or at least for me, and just uh, yeah, really listened in an empathic way, and not trying to like uh, not trying to comprehend our thoughts, but just listen and accept them as they are, and and yeah, mostly that. I think that a lot of external influences got into our chain of thoughts that makes challenging to make it that sorry affects negatively in our time when we do introspection. uh, yeah.
So you're saying, so what is it that, are you saying that external influences is what makes it hard to listen to your own thoughts and ideas?
No, I think it's the way we communicate with ourselves. Like when we sit down and say like, okay, I'm going to think what I want to do in the next few months. Uh, I think that we don't really, or I don't really listen to what my mind wants, or my mind, or the ideas I have. I just judge them and try to find what, if they are good, if they are bad, if they give me fear, or if not. I think all that thinking from external influences. For example, if I'm thinking that I want to drop out from college, and I judge that feeling, and I automatically start thinking about my family and what they're going to say, and I'll blah blah blah. I'm blocking that thoughts to have a place in my mind, and I I won't be able to understand my mind to like negotiate.
Yeah, so Tom, let me, that's really interesting. So let's take that example of let's say you're thinking about dropping out of college and then you say to yourself, well, what will my family think? How do you know which of your thoughts come from an external influence, and how do you know which one is like coming from you?
Okay, so I think it's more about the order of thoughts or ideas.
Okay.
Uh, because if I am thinking that maybe dropping out of college is not a good idea, and I'm reacting, um, sorry, if I'm thinking that because I reacted to my mind giving thoughts about maybe dropping out of college, um, I think I can recognize that that comes from fear, and you can link thought and emotion that in that situation, and maybe that gives you like the yeah, the alarm that it may be not coming from you. It's more like having fear about something that may or may not happen in the future, that is having problems with your family. uh and yeah, but it is I think it's very difficult.
Yeah, so I heard you kind of say, and there's a little bit of lag, so we didn't catch 100% of what you said, but I heard you say kind of the
Oh yeah,
order of idea. The
sorry.
order matters a lot. So what came first? and that if you're reacting to a thought, there's a greater chance that that reaction is coming from an external kind of source.
Yeah, I do believe that. I think if you're listening and accepting or reactions quickly and trying to patch things that may be problematically in the future, you can like understand yourself. And it's not only a thing about understand yourself rationally, but it's more like feeling like you are listening to yourself. And I think that in some part, at least for me, clicked, and it helped me a lot to like believe in myself more, because I was like more in line with what I was thinking, even if that leads to deciding not to drop out. At least I knew that I was thinking about that, but I made a decision. And I think that instance of negotiating with your mind or with yourself is very important to like put a foot forward and keep going on that direction.
Okay. So, Tom, it's a little bit hard for us to understand what you're saying. So I think we'll probably going to have to try again later or something like that. I'm not sure if there's something you can do about the lag, but we're basically catching about
Yeah, I
50% of what you
think
say.
I don't. Oh
Which,
yeah, I'm sorry. That's
no,
wrong.
I mean, it's not your fault. It's, it's the internet.
Yeah.
And, but I still do very much appreciate you calling in today, because I think that, there's a lot that we did catch, which I thought was really interesting. And the main thing is that sometimes we have like an internal impulse or desire or thought, and the way that we react to it can be problematic. And that sometimes the way that we react to it is based on external influences. And how do you know? Because everything is happening in your mind, right? And I think it's a really cool insight that how do you know what's coming from an external influence and what's coming from an internal influence? Well, it's simply the sequence. It's what came first and how you react to it that could give us a clue as to what is coming from you and what is coming from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for
That's
that insight. I
basically
think that's actually very helpful. I think it's going to be hard for us to continue talking, though, just because of the lag. So,
yeah.
but I very
No
much
problem.
appreciate what
Completely
you shared.
understand. No, yeah, perfect. Thanks you for the opportunity, and yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye, Tom. Thanks for calling in. It's useful, right? So it's interesting. I think it's like, it's so interesting how it's honestly a mild to moderate disruption in how we're used to receiving information and listening to things can make it so hard to actually like take what people say seriously, It's like the mind completely loses track of the content of what Tom was saying because of the manner in which it was being said. But anyway, let's keep going.
Ready for next?
Yes. Hello. Welcome, friend.
Hi.
Hi. What do you go by, my friend?
Well, I kinda have name in documents, which is Max, but usually I don't have a name, so people treat me differently. So I used to that like something without a name, so you can call me as you wish, and it's fine.
Can you help me find something to? How should I refer to you?
What comes to my mind, to your mind?
I mean, if your name on the document says Max, I can call you that, but it seems like you don't really identify with that. So
Yes,
how do you think of yourself in terms of identity?
I know that I don't have an identity, and people usually like called me like a Staffy or Ghost or whatever. Some people say that I'm not even exist.
Wait, can we talk about that for a second?
Of course, I'm kind of very curious for people, especially for doctors, and this is why I follow you, because I have passed like really a lot of help, and no one can help you, and something from your channel helped me. I kind of knew it, but I need a confirmation from that because I thought I was insane or whatever.
What was it from our channel that helped you?
Some practices that you said from your spiritual perspective, when you combine your with psychiatric experience, I
Can
came up with myself in my childhood. But whenever I say that or ask people, they say that I'm insane. And sometimes I had like crazy idea or whatever, like 1 week or 2 weeks, and in next day or you had a stream like that, and I had like weird numbers or conclusions or whatever, and you say something about it, and I was like, how it could come to my mind. So I have like a really great of experience of a doctors. Like I have passed more than 500 doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and stuff like that. And that I found out that when you ask people about something, they doesn't really have anything to say to you, because like if you understand the topic and ask like what is enjoyment or what is the sense of life or whatever, and they try to like the topic or whatever, and you say no, there is no such thing as a topic or specific, you either understand it or don't, and people become mad at me, even blacklist. And I've searched a lot of internet like where you can find, and almost never seen anyone who could say anything like helpful. But you one of two guys who could say anything.
so if I'm understanding you correctly, what was helpful is some of the perspectives that we have on spirituality.
Yes.
Can you help me understand how that was helpful?
You understand one thing, that science is not first comer. Like you have to find not even balance but communication with science and understand the people or stuff like that. And mostly like you have to agree with science or experience or some research or stuff like that, and you haven't argue with that at all. And if you do argue, you don't understand, you're stupid, you're weird, and stuff like that. And I was really surprised when you really try to help to people instead then make them diagnoses. Because when you ask, do you really like want to help, need to cope a new habits or strategy or whatever, or I call you a diagnosis, and people will suffer because, oh, I'm bad because I have ADHD, PTSD or stuff like that, and I don't know what to do, and I will ask like any information about that,
I see. So
and usually it suffers.
I see. What I'm hearing you say, Max, because this is why I wanted to
Yeah.
understand, because what I'm hearing you say is that you've worked with a lot of mental health professionals, and they are quite insistent about labeling you in some way, as opposed to trying to help you with particular problems that you may have. Is that fair?
No, not much.
Okay. Let me try asking a different way.
Okay.
When you, it sounds like when you've questioned or challenged some of the people who have given you a diagnosis, that doesn't really work very well. And they get upset with you or call you stupid or something like that. Did I understand that correctly?
Partly.
Can you help me understand what I'm missing?
You are missing that there are some people, maybe group of people, that are not suit any category, diagnosis or whatever, and then they come to doctor or mental health professionals.
I
They
see.
cannot simply say you like, we don't know what the hell do with you, and try to make you with everything they know, and when you don't fit or don't agree or don't follow anything, you're like broken or whatever.
I see. So what? Okay, that helps a lot. And I'm still hesitating to call you Max, but I don't know what else to call you. So what I'm kind of hearing you say there is that it seems like you don't really fit into the categories that people try to put you in, and that you're kind of like a separate sort of being.
Yeah, because I have very hard kind of diagnoses that are not treated, but I'm kind of alive. Also, I'm almost no eat food and no sleep, but I'm kind of alive. I can just kind of, exist, but not follow biological laws or like, and I'm kind of fine. And people say like, you have to sleep or have to eat a lot or do exercise and stuff like that. And I'm kind of no, that's too much exhausting, and kind of like, sleep 2 hours per day or 2 hours per few days or per week and nothing special. And instead of like how we can help you or whatever, you should do medication, you should do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then weird test, and then another, and lab begins over and over and over again, and then we don't want your stupid or weird questions. We have our therapist who help with us. We don't want that you kind of, fragment our body or like our mind, what they think about stuff. And when I ask, okay, what should I do or what should I do to trust you or to understand, you say anything, just anything and all, and not quotes from books or what you have heard or like anything. And nobody can say you anything at all besides their knowledge.
So can you help me? Like, can you tell me what's an example of a question that you would ask that people have difficulty answering?
For example, like, why do you think you a good specialist or psychologist or psychiatrist?
I can see how people would be pissed off by that.
Just simple,
It's.
like,
I think it's a fair question, but I can see why someone would be upset by asking that. Does that make sense to you? Why someone may be offended by that question?
it's obvious just for one reason. If you understand like emotion, how people see the world or whatever, there is no difficult to say to you, why do you think you make a progress? But when you say like, I have some instruments with one people and another I don't like, you're not mental health professional, you just an idiot, sorry for my language, who tries to help themselves than other people. And I have like, my goal 3 questions: why you are a good mental health professional, what is enjoyment, and what do you live for?
I see.
And
So
if like
yeah,
I not even like ask you anything to say, just say like whatever you want. I'm not even, like one answer, second, third, or whatever, just anything. And I'm very rare to find that anyone can say anything at all. And I understand that I have very traumatic life, suicidal attempts and stuff like that. But you try to like understand anything at all, but people like have all answers and they are fine. And I'm kind of weird or outcast or insane or psycho and stuff like that, but okay.
do you think you're weird or insane or psycho? Or is that what other
I'm
people call
not,
you?
but I used to told that everywhere in school, from parents, at work. So I kind of, play like a clown or whatever, like my people, like, okay, I'm weird, I'm like psycho, and you are not, or whatever. And I ask like in front of like very honest questions, like what your idea of life, or what is a thinking process. So you're making thoughts, understand on life or whatever, but how do you deal that? How do you understand that your thought process become from, like, where's the origin, whatever? And people like, well, I don't know. And then I ask, isn't it weird that you don't understand or don't get or don't interest why it comes, but you have to have it from different people?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So can I? And I'm still sort of. So do you have a sense of your own identity? Like, do you identify with a name or something like that?
No.
How do you understand why you don't have a name that you can identify with?
I don't have to identify myself with a name or something.
Okay, I agree. You don't have to, but why don't you?
Why should I?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. Okay, yeah. I mean, so unless you have, so is it fair for me to understand that if you had a good reason to identify with a name, then maybe you would do it?
I have like, a lot of that questions and a lot of that answers and stuff like that. And I was considering like to help you with your work because my like huge experience and stuff like that. And kind of people have hobby. And I have weird thing like I have because I have left like to live like few years and I'm kind of live backwards. And I've even find out way to think backwards. And like
Yeah.
you have a topic or something and you can think it forward, then you have think it backward, then you can like one inside of another and you have a third kind of thing. They are attached each other and you have three different topic or perspectives from what one thing. And that comes into my mind, like a habit. And then I try to like explain to other people their round eyes and open mouth and like what's like, I don't know, complicated in that it's like so simple or whatever.
So is it okay if I call you Max?
Fine.
Okay. So I would love your help, Max. So the question that we have today is, why is it hard to find purpose? And I would love to hear, first of all, I would love your help. And I would love to hear, you're saying that we're thinking about that question thinking forward. I would love to hear what you think about it thinking backward. Can you help me with that?
Okay. Of course. I hope you will understand.
I hope
I'm
I
not
will
sure
too.
you will, but fine.
So tell me, why do you think it's hard to find purpose?
Before that, people doesn't know what the word mean.
Okay. Like what the word purpose means?
Yes.
So can you help us understand what the word purpose means?
I just ask you, like, just like a trailer of the movie and I ask you like one simple question. Do you, when you interact with an object or a thing, do you interact with actually a thing, its name, or the description? Like, how do you understand it?
How do I understand when I interact with something in the world? What am I interacting with?
Yeah. Yes, for example, you right now holding a pen. Do you interact like with object with the name that you call it's a pen, or with something that allows you to write something?
So I would actually say that what I interact with is I don't actually interact with an object. The real thing that I'm interacting with is my perception of the object, right? So how do I know I'm holding a pen? I know I'm holding a pen because I have some nerves in my hand that feel the weight and texture of the pen. So actually I'm not interacting with my awareness of the pen has nothing to do with the pen. It has to do with my sensory experience of the pen. Does that make sense?
Of course. And really, as you like to say, like tricky thing, that your understanding to like deliver to another person, and that your understanding and his understanding comes together, and this is like the most complicated thing, because world becomes more complicated and complicated, and we deliver a new words, a new understanding, whatever, but what does it actually means or how I can deal with that doesn't change at all. So, for example, when you made up like a new question like healthy borders, and you ask like a person, what does it actually mean? If you like, for example, if you understand the people and can communicate with them, or understand how their mind works, or like type of understanding they work, why do you need these borders? This something does it not exist, and we develop a lot of stuff that doesn't exist because world becomes more complicated and complicated, and we like detach from reality, and you have like forced someone or yourself to be real instead of like in this world of technology and stuff like that.
So you're losing me a little bit, but let me see if I understood. So I would say that the reason that you're right that my understanding of something and your understanding of something meeting those things is hard. That's why I think we have language, right? So language is a way that we try to. So when I use the word pen, is this really a pen or is it not a pen? Like, I don't know philosophically, but I mean, like, from a communication standpoint, the reason we have words is so that we can try to match our understandings. The problem is that we'll never be perfect at that.
No, that's not the point. Okay, I'll ask you differently. What, for example, you and me or other people should do that for different people one name mean the same? Like what people or some person should do that one name or one object for everyone was the same? For
I don't think
example,
that's
if I like,
possible.
and if I say it's possible, but very rare someone thinks about that. I even have someone who has a lot of research about that, and there is a way, but not obvious,
Is it possible?
of course.
How?
Why do you think people have kind of united work standards?
Do they have united work standards?
In general,
It's a good question. Let me think about it. Can I think for a second?
of course.
So I think probably the reason we have united work standards is because as human beings, we have discovered that in order to coexist, we need some conventions. So I'll just give you an example. I don't know if this is going to apply or not, but here in the United States, we drive on the right side of the road. And it's not that the right side of the road is better than the left side of the road, but the important thing is that everyone agrees to the same set of rules, right? Because if everyone is like, I'm going to drive on the right side of the road, then people coming in the opposite direction will not bump into me. So sometimes with human beings, the reason that we have standards of behavior is because it allows us to interact in a harmonious manner. So I would say that probably the reason that we have some standards of work have something to do with human convention, have something to do with like biology and evolution, and have something to do with like some kind of functional benefit to the standard that we have. So why isn't the standard of work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? That's because that's not biologically possible. So we have some kind of biological constraint that creates some standard of work, and then there's some of this convention business that goes on there too. Does that work as an answer?
How I can phrase that? If it fine for you, then yes. I would say it's good that you have some kind of answer than nothing.
What?
Well, I usually ask people this question a lot, and this is kind of, for me, not simple, but regular questions. And very rare that someone say you anything at all.
Okay, yeah.
And that you have answer that you have made, it's good because you have at least something instead of nothing.
So I'm hearing you kind of say that sometimes you'll ask like really, really, really basic questions about why stuff happens and you don't get very good answers.
I don't answers at all. Or usually this is philosophical, I never thought about that and stuff like that. And then like, if you don't understand the basic stuff, how you can make, like the whole digital world work or stuff like that, or you want, I don't know, space expense, medical stuff, whatever.
So Max, if I can go back to like, can you help me understand, like, do you feel like you have a purpose?
A lot of people to me say yes, but I'm not sure.
A lot of people to you say yes. What do you think? Right. So
I think
I'll turn your answer back on you, which is that if it works for you, then that's fine. But I mean, forget about what other people say. Like, what do you think?
What I think is very complicated. What can I say that everyone could understand is I try to help people understand why they are live for.
That sounds like a noble purpose.
Unfortunately, I cannot, think about like hobby, dream, work, enjoyment, because I know what enjoyment, how it's made, and I, this kind of people that only enjoyment they could make is something in their mind like works, and that's all.
So have you been able? So you said that your purpose is to help people understand why they're here, or what the nature of things is?
Any questions they have, why they are here, why they like something or dislike,
Bro,
why this world happens.
Can I call you bro? Do you identify as male?
I don't think I have a male or female. Sometimes, because I'm from Ukraine, from my accent, sometimes I can and like make words as a female. So sometimes I forget that I'm male and speak as female and backwards. So
But
depend.
are you offended if I call you bro?
No.
Okay. So I can call you bro?
Okay.
Okay. So bro, let me ask you, like, so you said that you help people try to understand, like, some of these basic things about why they're here in this world. Can you please share with us if you've been able to help people, and how, like, what did they discover about what is enjoyment?
Like how I understand to
Like,
help people,
yeah, like, how have you been able to help people by asking these questions?
because they forced with my questions that they never heard or never thought anything about. And I just, like one question, another question, and I'm like, oh my God, I like lived 20, 30, 40 years, never thought about that. Or like, why did they think this way or that way? And stuff like that. Or like, why do you have kids? Or why do you think family is important? Or whatever. Like people say that I'm like not rich to this world, like kind of sit kind of on top of that.
Do
Maybe because of that I have experienced clinical death, so I don't have really,
Wait,
I
what?
can understand the family. Clinical death, like
You
when
did you say
people
you
come
have
back from,
experienced clinical death?
yeah.
What does that mean?
When you kind of come back after you have been dead for like couple of minutes or 10 minutes.
And
Kind
what
of you have been on other side of existence when your body has been dead.
and can you tell me what that's like?
That's kind of very weird. Like, for example, like imagine everything you have seen in life, you like main character, and happens with you, and at the same time you like a witness, and witnessing this is from the other side. You understand the action, the voices, but no color. It's like black or gray, whatever, without colors at all, and no sounds. And you understand it very great with two perspectives already as your main character. And this happens with you all the time. And you as a witness and witness from other side and want to change something, but you can't.
So it sounds like you could make observations of the life that you used to live, but you couldn't interact in any way, in that there was like no color, or that, is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Max, did some of your your lack of identity, did that change when you experienced clinical death, or you felt this way before clinical death?
It was kind of when it started, and after that, and because of that I haven't had dreams. Really, really, very, very rare. And when high stress, and only in this way, like I cannot have a dream, I only can have a dream and this kind of thing.
Wait, but did you have a name before clinical death?
I always kind of have a name, but also in school I was bullied, and when someone called my name, I was hoping that it's not me. And when everyone asked why it's important, do you have a name? Like it's just number of sounds or whatever. What's the difference? And people all these times were shocked. So I can understand why people like it, but for me it's like I can call you like this way or another way or whatever. So.
So Max, I just want to say thank you for calling today. Like, I think I was really, I'm not quite sure what I've learned from you, but I've learned something. I think it may take me some time to digest and understand. I'm really sorry to hear that. It sounds like your life has been very, very difficult in a lot of ways. Like, it sounds like you were bullied, and that you've seen lots and lots of doctors and psychologists and stuff, and that many of them have not taken you seriously. It also sounds like you ask a lot of like very big or very basic questions, like what is happiness, what is enjoyment, why do you have kids, and that sometimes that upsets people, or they treat you poorly because you ask those questions. But I'm also hearing that sometimes when you ask some of those really basic questions, you can help other people a lot. So I'm grateful that you're doing that kind of thing. And I really hope that you can find, I'm not saying that you're not at peace, but I hope that you can find your own enjoyment or peace or be treated with respect. Maybe it's not really anything that you have to do internally, but the way that the world treats you. And if you do have, if there's any stuff related to diagnosis that bothers you, I really hope you're able to get help for that.
Well, okay. I just wanted to say that no reason to worry about that. And if you're interested, I can help you like with anything that you do, because I have a lot of information, exercise, like a lot of stuff, because I've used to help a lot of people, especially who are like 40s, 50s, 60s, who are like 10 years of experience, like psychologists, psychiatrists, 15, 20, and stuff like that. And I'm in peace, and this is why I try to help to people, because I understand that, or I kind of bored that everyone says it's so interesting to speak with you, like we
That
are so like proud and stuff
that
like that. So I just,
that it
what
certainly
should I
is.
do?
Yeah. So
So I just, okay, I'll help you with everything I know, and you will be shocked because everything is boring for me. So I just, oh, that's fine.
well, so Max, I'm first of all, I just want to say thank you. So I think you've helped a lot today, and I'm grateful to you for that. I'm happy to hear that you're at peace and you're hoping to continue helping other people and continue helping. Like, I think that's great. And I'm sorry that it sounds like you don't really have too much fun though, and I'm sorry to hear that. But I think you've helped us plenty today. And if there's another opportunity that you think there's something specific you could help us with, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, like almost every specific you touch with streams, I can like expand or describe or rephrase or whatever with like different perspectives.
I don't doubt that you have something interesting to offer for basically everything we discuss. That's very clear to me. I think the challenge is that lots of other people out there also have very interesting things to offer. And so we try to balance all these different perspectives and give everyone an opportunity to help or offer their perspective. And I'm really glad that you called in today, and I'm grateful that you shared your experience with us.
Yeah, thank you to you for listening, and
It was my pleasure.
Wish you. Yeah, I wish you.
I enjoyed it.
Okay. Everyone enjoy.
It's nice to hear you laugh, Max.
I just had some weird flashbacks from my past, then I don't know what to do, what the sense. 1 hour later, I understand why war or whatever and what do in my life, and I am fine. Nobody can find the real life, and I did this in 1 hour. So, but that passed.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what that meant, but that's okay. Thank you very much for calling, Max, and good luck to you, my friend.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so that was different. So I just want to... Let me just process. I need to just think for a second after that call. So my first thought is based. My second thought is based. And my third thought thought is based. Yeah, so, I think we sometimes get way too caught up in like little things, right? Like we get super caught up in like, oh, this person didn't text me back. And I think we could all benefit from a little bit of Max or whatever that being was, like that perspective, like take a step back, like take a big step back. And like, because if you think about it, when Max asks a question, what is enjoyment? It's sort of like, I didn't enjoy this meal. Well, what is enjoyment? It's like, let's take a step back and really think about what are we doing. I think it's actually very useful. So there's a text, maybe this is just top of mind because I was teaching about this yesterday, but there's this text from the Hindu tradition called the Brahma Sutra, which is like, starts with a lot of this stuff that Max was talking about, which is like, what is enjoy, like what are like the basics of what we're doing here? And it sounds like the guy got a couple of diagnoses here or there. Sounds like he's had many, I think he's had 500 encounters with mental health professionals or doctors. Maybe they're not mental health professionals. And like, but sometimes like, it can be useful to just ask some of these fundamental questions. And it's also important to remember that I kind of feel like we can get myopic with our experience of life, right? We're talking about like burnout and things like that. And it's like, life is like way bigger than this. And I think it's lovely to hear from someone who's just had an experience of life that's very different from our own. I think there's a lot to be sad about in terms of just some of the stuff they was describing, being bullied and not being taken seriously. And like, he asks a question, which I think is a fair question. What makes you qualified to be a good psychologist? Like, I think it's a fair question. I'm not offended if someone asks me that. And it's, it's a fair question. Like, this is something that is presumably is going to be helping you. And I also know that some people thought, this is really confusing and maybe this guy is trolling. I didn't get that. And even if he is, like, that's okay, I guess. I didn't get the sense he was trolling. I think it's just, this is exactly kind of my point, is that his experience of life is so different that our mind naturally meets it with skepticism. Right? That's like this can't be real. But this is my point, is like, this is what's so cool about whatever the hell we're doing here, is that I don't know that I would ever encounter this person outside of something like Healthy Gamer. Like, this is the whole point. This is the cool thing about the internet. It's not just a device to exchange pictures of cats, right? It's like, you can like understand how wide and varied the experience of human beings is. And you can understand that, okay, what does it mean to be human? Like, you're going to understand what it means to be human when there's someone who's had an experience that's completely different from yours, is so different from yours that you meet it with skepticism. And then y'all discover that there's something like that you can actually connect with. And this is something that, I don't know if y'all caught our group coaching streams, but this was like, I remember when Ruby was like, I thought I had nothing in common with you because we are completely different human beings. And I think she was talking to Zell. And Zell is like, I work for Riot Games, run podcasts. I'm Korean, and I'm grinding right, left, and center all day, every day. And Ruby is like, I'm gonna do sound baths, meditation. Do yoga, and I'm gonna move out to Portugal and have a farmhouse or something. And these are completely different human beings. And you can learn a lot from like talking to another human being. And the really cool thing is, this is how you like, what does it mean to be human? Right? So people ask these questions. What does it mean to be human? And then philosophers will debate them. You're not going to find that answer with a philosopher. You're going to find that answer when you talk to a lot of different humans that are very different from you. And you're like, this person is completely different from me. And then when you figure out, okay, every single human being that I encounter, what is it that we share? And that is what it means to be human, because that's the common denominator, because we're all humans, right? And so what's weird about this is like, you know, when we talk about purpose and some of these weird things, how do you find purpose? What does it mean to be human? I don't know how you find that answer, but you have to sort of discover it, right? So our method for that is like group coaching, and it's like your mileage may vary, TBH. I'm not saying that. So we can be confident in a lot of outcomes, right? So we can be confident in, let's say, a sense of confidence or quality of life or whatever, because we had this study where we had 1,300 people that we, you know, had pre and post tests for various different outcomes and use Promis questionnaires for depression and anxiety and quality of life and all this kind of stuff. So we can say like, yeah, this will help you like 25 to 40% in terms of reductions of feeling of depression, anxiety, 50% increase in purpose in life. But some of this stuff, honestly, is like your mileage may vary. If y'all want to give it a shot, you know, we for 24 hours just for our community, you can sign up on Discord and stuff. You can try it risk-free. There's a code and stuff, but like sometimes you got to just talk to people and be with people in like a non-normal setting, right? Because if you like meet someone at a party, you can't have a conversation like this. You can't like go to a job interview and if someone's like, what is enjoyment? Like you can't, you know, like having conversations like this require really bizarre and artificial circumstances. You know, the chat is saying, yes, you can. Well, okay, let me put it this way. You can't have conversations like that without some kind of consequence that most people would want to avoid. Anyway, so that's part of the reason that we try to create some of these environments that we do. So one of the key things, especially in like group coaching, which a lot of people get upset about, is everyone's like, wait, like we should finish this conversation later, or like, hey, we both play a particular video game, like let's queue up together. And we're like, no, doing that. Why? Because the rest of life then comes in. And we don't want the rest of life to come in. The whole point of something, especially like group coaching, is you've got a cohort of people and y'all are like going to talk about particular things, and it's going to be like sort of like a safe place. And what does part of that safety mean? It means that what happens here stays here, and you carry it with you, and then you start to make changes in the world, and then you bring that back to the group. All right, anyway, let's keep going. That was wild. Hello. Oh, is this person? Okay, I can turn on cam. Oh, but it's a weird angle. Maybe I can't. Hello.
Hey, Dr. K.
What's up, dude?
Nothing much. How are you?
I'm doing well. What do you go by?
I go by Paul.
Paul. I'm going to try to set up a camera that does not interfere with my camera. So you will have to... Yeah, that's not going to work. Let me try this for a second. Let's see if that works. And then let's see if I can do this. There we go. What's up, dude?
Nothing much, Dr. K. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. What do you go by?
I go by Paul.
Paul? It's nice to meet you, Paul.
It's nice to meet you too, Dr. K.
So tell me, what makes it hard to find purpose?
Yeah. For me personally, I was doing a bit of
lagging? You're lagging a little bit, and now I can't hear your voice, but I can see that you're speaking. You seem to have gone silent, but I don't see you muted. I'm just not hearing anything. I wonder if it's... did I do something? I'm wondering, Tech Teller, can you say something? Let me see if the sound is on my end.
Yep. Testing.
Okay, so I can hear Tech Teller fine. So, and yours was working, Paul. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, he's rejoining. Hello.
Hello. Is it any better?
Yes, way better. What's up, dude? So,
Nothing much, Dr. K. How are you?
third time's a charm.
Yes, always.
So tell me what makes it hard to find purpose? What do you think?
Yeah, so for me personally, I was doing a bit of reflecting. And as I was writing the post, I felt like it came a bit to fruition. So if you don't mind, I'll probably just read it so I can
Sure.
focus in. We have gone through a shared experience as humans for 2 years of our life. We had time to be alone, forced to go inwards, even traveling for minor events, called on us a lot to push through the obstacles that we were enforced even by law. We now have the opportunity to move past these experiences with a clear mind and see where we want to go. New year and a general sense of movement again can be nerve-wracking. What do we do now with our newfound freedoms? That was my thought. But the idea there for me was the what makes it a little bit difficult is when we start the new year, we kind of have this thing in our mind where we feel it's important to spark, to get going, and then just keep at it. uh, but there's sometimes where we fall a little bit off the path or what we would like to do. And we kind of fall into a pattern of, oh, maybe this is too difficult. Maybe why is my motivation lacking now when it was so high at the beginning of the year? And on the whole, you could. I didn't know if you wanted to talk, Dr. K. Sorry.
I'm loving what you're saying. Keep going, Paul. I mean, unless
Okay.
you're done, but
No, no. So the idea there was when we talk about motivation, I've always been curious where that feeling kind of comes from, and understanding that actually there is ups and downs on the path of where you're trying to go, and actually the fact that you even started going down the slope or the mountain bike, that actually in itself is an achievement in itself that we tend to overlook, if I could say that.
sure. So
And go ahead. Sorry.
keep going.
And the idea is when we think that the goal is hard to reach or harder than we originally expected, why is it that we kind of give up? And I was always questioning that myself personally, but I actually started running into people quite a bit who were actually falling into that same sort of pattern of questioning and wondering why. And eventually, I started to learn for myself that actually it's a long road to where we're going, but a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the very first step, as corny as that sounds. And I don't know. I think that's a really difficult thing as a person who's trying to achieve something or pursue something, to lose sight of that fact. So that's why I think it's difficult to make plans in 2023 and any year really.
I'm curious. What's are you nervous? Is that why you're laughing, or what's going on? Because I heard you crack a couple jokes in there and things like that, but
No, I actually just feel very happy.
Okay.
So it's nice
Yeah,
to
you don't
talk.
seem nervous to me, but Okay. So let me ask you, is it okay if I ask you a couple questions about that, Paul?
Sure.
Um, so where do you think this idea of getting going in the new year comes from?
I think it comes from a lot of different sources. It's kind of programmed into us in a way, at least in the Western world, to um, more or less think of the new year as a new start, a refresh. Um, and I don't believe that is actually true. It can be used as a stepping stone in the direction you're trying to go, but you still have to do the walk. You still have to make the journey. um, and that's where that thought, I think, kind of comes from. It can even come from yourself, it can come from your family, it can come from multiple different sources, I would say. Um, but at the end of the day, it seems more or less along the lines of, since this is what we're supposed to be doing on the new year, this is what we do.
Okay.
And yeah, that's my thought process.
So like there's a programming, there's like kind of this, everyone collectively gets together and is like, hey, like New Year is a time of new beginnings, so we should be doing new stuff.
Yeah, let's do new things, man. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And um, I thought you shared another really interesting point, which is that oftentimes getting started is the hardest part, and that we tend
Mhm.
to overlook. So, like when we, this is kind of if I'm piecing together what you said, or I think you kind of said it pretty clearly, but you know, when we start doing something, sometimes it's harder than expected,
Mhm.
and then we can lose motivation. Like motivation can kind of fizzle out,
Mhm.
and when we do that, we sort of see that as a failure, as opposed to acknowledging that getting started is actually the hardest part, and like there's a W somewhere in there, which we don't really acknowledge.
Yeah, and I actually think that's one of the more major issues that I've actually heard a lot of people talk about. Like, it isn't the fact that that desire isn't gone, it's just pushed to the back for some reason. And it kind of seems like friction is viewed as something to run away from instead of understand that if something was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Okay.
And that's the thought process, at
Paul,
least.
are you high on life, or are you just straight up high?
No, I'm high on life, I
Okay.
promise.
Um, and why do you think people give up when it's harder than expected?
I mean, for obvious reasons. You can, maybe not so obvious, I apologize. But you can more or less, I describe it as have a growing pain. And when you're growing or trying to learn, um, there is a form of change that has to occur inside of you. Um, and I think the idea that it can be overnight, that it can be quick, is not very obvious when you initially start. Um,
Wait, so are you saying it can be overnight, or it isn't overnight?
uh, in my personal case, that's all I can talk about. It isn't an overnight thing.
Okay.
Um, it's increments. It's sections of growth and recognizing it, no matter how minor. And I feel that being hard on yourself and trying to shield yourself from your growth is probably the easier road. But that growth has to come from within, and there has to be a change from within, I would say, as you're growing. It's a process, but that's just my thought.
So let's say like fair point that oftentimes we want to shield ourselves from difficult experiences. What do you think it is that allows people to not shield themselves? Like how, like if I'm at the fork in the road, right? What's the determining factor about whether I take the easy road or I take the hard road?
For me personally, it's an form of an internal compass, a form of a path. I imagine there's a split in the road, and then you see something in the middle that isn't as worn down, that isn't as cleared off, but there's something that's driving you towards that path. Maybe it's an inspiration that came from anywhere, and that's the I song that you hear when you're starting to walk down that middle path.
What do you mean by song that you start to hear when you're walking down that middle path? What does that mean?
Yeah. For me, I tend to think a bit more musically. It's sort of a this is a negative connotation, but I'm not meaning it that way. A siren song of sorts that kind of guides your decisions in between the decision part. And I know that's a bit more abstract.
Guides your decisions in between the decision part. What, help me understand that a little bit? It's clear to me that you've got this whole internal system going on, but I'm trying to understand it.
No, I agree. I appreciate that up front. When you're deciding something a bit more concrete, when you're deciding something, there's usually a part of you that is consciously making the decision to decide something.
Yep.
But there's also something next to it that is actually the guiding hand in that decision or that process. That's the best way I can make it concrete.
Okay. So are you talking about the guiding hand for the part of you that is deciding to decide? Or the guiding hand for which decision you end up making once you decide to make a decision? So basic decision, A or B, decision to choose A or B, right? Where is the siren song? Is it up here or is it up here or down here?
I believe it's up here as you illustrated with your hand.
Okay.
That's the just a sort of feeling that's hard to describe in words. But there's a decision between the decisions you can make. There's a blank space. And the strength to stay in that middle space before making a decision is what makes it make it feel more worth it, I would say.
So, but how does one hear the siren song, Paul? Or what makes it hard to hear the siren song? Whichever one you feel.
Yeah. There's this idea of intuition. There's this idea of walking your own path on purpose. And there's this middle area that's that kind of goes past words. But
Okay.
it's that middle area of being able to stay with yourself before you make a decision, A or B, and understand that there's always more alternatives. It just takes a little bit of space in between to help you understand it or help you choose it, is the best way that I could describe it.
No, I think so I mean this is why we're doing this today, is because like I think that a lot of people have different perspectives on this stuff, and I think what we're trying to do today is to try to, it's not that we have to get clear answers today. I think we're really just collecting information, and we're going to really try to figure out, I think I understand a portion of what you're saying, so I'm going to try to maybe toss something back at you in a second, but I think it's fine if you can't offer a clearer answer than what you can offer. So here's how I would sort of understand this. One is that, so I feel like when we're thinking about decisions, should I do A or B? We're kind of like very, a lot of the decision making process has to do with like external things, right? So A has particular attributes and B has particular attributes, but the attributes of A or B are determined by the external world, right? So let's say that
Right.
I'm trying to decide if I should date this person or date this person. Well, this person has these qualities, this person has those qualities. My decision to date someone appears to be dependent on the qualities of the two people.
Right.
And if I'm kind of reactionary, I'm kind of tossing that word out there, I will end up picking something based on the qualities of person A versus the qualities of person B. What I'm kind of hearing you say when you talk about this middle space is that if we don't jump to that reaction and choose based on the qualities of the person, but instead if we just sit there for a little bit, we don't even think about A or B or make a pros and cons list or anything like that. If we just kind of sit in that middle space for a little while, something else will float to the surface. And as you put it, a guiding hand, right? So what is this? It's not a quality that the external world can show us. It's something, maybe intuition, maybe whatever. But that hanging out in that middle space will somehow give you a third dimension of information, which then you can make a decision based on. And that the more that you make a decision based on that internal compass or something like that, but the only way you're going to hear that song is if you don't jump to an A or a B. Does that resonate with what you're trying to say?
Yeah, and I think a part of it as well that just kind of nuances it, but you said it correctly, at least from how I'm hearing it, is there we're usually set on an A, B, sometimes we have a C, D, E, F, and so on. But once you kind of wade in that middle without having an A, B, all letters of the alphabet, and kind of just see what happens, eventually you can find a place, some sort of guiding hand, some sort of guiding hand that leads you more towards a decision that you might not have known at the time.
So
Yeah.
So Paul, like, is there a particular process that you use to hear the siren song? Like, what works for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's me specifically. Hopefully, it can apply to others. But usually, some form of meditation is a way to kind of sit within yourself and kind of just see all of these A, B, C, D, E, F, G's, so on kind of come up. And as you wait there, maybe not pick any of those letters, and maybe something else comes up that even if it's a small glimmer of something you weren't expecting, it's a way to reaffirm a direction you might be trying to go in. And that's the best way that I can describe that. And there's also some pretty interesting dream work and sleep work that you can do to kind of go a little.
Tell us. What kind of dream work and sleep work do you do?
Well, I've recently, this is me personally, but I recently looked into Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche and some of the dream yogic guru yoga, all of these different functions that you can learn about in the meditation guide with Dr. K. But you can learn or get pointed in a direction with these sorts of things by going to the meditation guide. But the idea is what I've done is I tend to
Wait,
try
hold
and
on, Jason.
prepare.
I'm pretty sure. So I was involved with the creation of Dr. K's Guide to Meditation. We don't talk about dream yoga in there. How do you? Do we?
We outside projection, astral projection, changing of that
Okay.
sort of concept. It kind of can guide you in a direction if that's what you're feeling. But either way,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, because I was like, I don't think that's in the guide, bro. But I mean, I sort of know, like, we touch on some of those concepts, but we don't teach you. We don't teach out of body meditations and things like that in the guide, right? I don't think we do that, or do we? And I just missed this.
Maybe it could have been a live stream, but
Okay.
either way, the meditation module
Okay.
kind of opens your mind to different forms of meditation.
Yeah. So that I'll completely. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing, because it is not. If you follow the stuff in the guide and you have some kind of experience that gets you interested in further things, and then whichever Rinpoche you're digging into now, that's actually exactly the point of the guide. But I think you're beyond the guide, bro. Which is fine. Like, that's what the guide is for. It's to get people started so that you can move beyond it into the stuff that you resonates with you and things like that. But I was just like, I don't think we teach that. We have taught some stuff around out of body experiences on stream and meditations around dream and sleep and stuff like that. But anyway, but please continue. So you're doing some of this kind of work, and like, what's that been like for you?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is that there's a lot of different experiences that can come from these sorts of things. But for me personally, I've been luckily been able to kind of be able to focus on the and this, you might know what I'm talking about, but the Dak Suchin A, Arabic A, but either way, the throat chakra, stuff like that.
Okay.
But either way, I've been lucky enough to be able to find a relaxation in the peace that comes from feeling my throat and what comes from it at different points of time. But either way, that's just one experience. It can even be as easy as kind of just becoming aware that we actually spend a lot of our time in life asleep, and it can actually be a great sort of catapult into practice. If you don't have time throughout the day, which I was running into, just the hour, 30 minutes before bed, just kind of reflecting on the day and being able to relax the mind and everything, just to kind of experience that, has kind of opened up the ability to be able to understand different perspectives. Maybe A, B, C, D, and so on. Actually, there's another alphabet. Who knows? But that's kind of what I've done. And sleep yoga is kind of just a really nice feeling for me because being able to have a dress rehearsal of specific events and stuff like that has been quite nice to understand that it's a long road to where we're going, but it starts just
Yeah.
by walking. So
Cool.
that's kind of my thought process.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing all that, Paul. It sounds like you're on quite the journey. And a
I
big part of your
appreciate that.
journey is actually sitting still, which is great.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
part. It's a part of the journey that we oftentimes neglect. Is like we're thinking that the journey is all about movement from A to Z, whereas like a big part of it is just sitting down for a little while.
yeah, and just an extra nuance. I also have ADHD, but being able to bring in focus has been a very important aspect of learning that you can direct your ideas and everything in a direction. And that's been very helpful.
Cool.
So just extra nuance, but it's no problem.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're figuring out how to move forward given your
Exactly.
unique cognitive fingerprint. So that's fantastic, man. Well, thanks a lot for calling today and appreciate your perspective, dude.
No problem, Dr. K. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, take care, man. Good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
So talk about, let's pause for a second. Okay. And then maybe we can do, I think we have time for maybe one more. Let me see if we can have that or not. But so what did I want to say? So just a couple things. So we are all for plugs for our products and services, right? So like Dr. K's guide is great. It's a wonderful introduction to meditation. To be fair, what this guy was talking about, I don't think is in the guide. Okay? So we love it when people from our community love our products and services. That's what we build them for. Dr. K's guide was built for y'all. And what I actually really like about this is that, like, that's actually the point, is that it's not, Dr. K's guide's not where you end. It's where you start. But just to be clear, we're not going to teach you how to astrally project in Dr. K's guide to meditation. Okay? There's no like dream analysis or things like that. There are a couple of techniques around sleeping and dreaming. We'll teach you yoga nidra and stuff like that. Yoga nidra has some scientific name now. I forget what it's called. And like it's not, just want to be clear, okay? So if you guys want like a comprehensive introduction to meditation, by all means, check out Dr. K's guide. It is also not uncommon for y'all to do the introductory meditations and to have some kind of experience. That's not, I mean, that's understandable. That's how meditation works. And so maybe if you're doing like yoga nidra or something like that, which is yogic sleep, and then you're like, wow, this really like worked for me. And then you should go and look into it. Go look at the weird esoteric stuff. Like, we're not really going to teach you that much stuff. I mean, we're going to teach you some stuff that's like on the cusp of esoteric, but we really don't teach a whole lot of esoteric meditation. And the other thing is that you don't, shunya meditations and things like that are actually like really, really powerful. Like you can, like the basic stuff can be powerful, but I just want to make it clear that, if you want a course in astral travel, you're not going to find it in Dr. K's guide. Okay? We good there? And we will, okay, so it looks like we're actually good. So that was our last call. So what we're going to do, let me just think about this for a second. How do I want to do this? So, okay. We're going to do a different kind of, we're going to teach you a different kind of meditation today. This meditation, though, is, so you're not going to be able to do it with us. You can't do it here. You can start it here, but you can't finish it here. So let's understand something, okay? So if we look at like what we want to do in life, the challenge is that we don't really know like what's going to work for us, right? So if you're like living your life, like let's say you're like 19 years old, you want to be happy in life. Like you don't know what's going to work. You're 19. You may have some inkling, but we don't really know. And so what our society tells us to do is trust us, right? That's what it basically says. And your parents and other people who mean well will tell you like, oh, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And so we go and we do those things, but then it's kind of a scary investment, right? Because if they're like, oh, you should major in this, that's 4 years of this kind of thing. If you decide to become a doctor, it's 4 years after that. It's like 8 years of undergrad, at least in the US, 4 years of medical school. Then you do, let's say 5 years of specialty training, 3 years of specialty training, whatever. So we're talking about like, you know, if you want to be a surgeon, for example, in the United States, it's a 13-year investment. And at the end of those 13 years, like, what if you don't like it? And that's a problem that a lot of people are stuck in, right? It's like, what if I don't like it after investing this time? I also hear this problem in terms of like dating, where people were like, do I want to invest the best years of my life dating this person? What happens if this relationship doesn't work out? Then will I be too old? I'll be over 30, right? And so we're always like worried about like losing time. And then, but we don't know, right? Because that's the challenge, is we're not omniscient. We can't see the future. We don't know if this person is the right person. And so what we tend to do is look externally. So we like look at other people and like, oh, that person seems happy. That person is dating this kind of person. Maybe I need to find that kind of person. Then I'll be happy. Or you look at other people and you're like, oh, that person is like, seems to be living it up. They're a Twitch streamer. Or they're a investment banker. Or they started a food truck. They seem to be happy. Let me do that. And so we like use our sense organs to make hypotheses about what makes us happy. And some people will sort of discover that there's this like internal compass thing. There's this intuition. There's this like inner voice, or call it whatever you want, that if you listen to that, you will be happy. But then the problem is, okay, how do we find the inner voice? So in order to find or hear the inner voice, we have to understand, how can I say this? We have to understand what happens on the inside. Okay, so this is like, going to sound kind of weird. But if we think about like in my internal space, the space that is me, I have two sources of information. I have information that comes from the outside and information that comes from the inside. These are the two, like, if you think about thoughts, right? Where can thoughts come from? Thoughts can come from the outside or the inside. And you can say, what do you mean thoughts come from the outside? I'll give you a simple example. Let's say I'm having this weird thing that we don't really do nowadays anymore with the internet. There are these things called conversations. And conversations is when you talk and then another person talks, and then you talk and then another person talks. It's kind of like playing tennis or Pong, but with words, okay? And the thing about a conversation is if you really pay attention, as the other person speaks, thoughts will arise in your head. Does that make sense? Hopefully you're paying attention. If you've got ADHD and you're not paying attention, the thoughts that arise in your head come from internal things. Did you guys get that? Make sense? But generally speaking, thoughts come from the outside, right? They're triggered by things. And the more that we get bombarded by thoughts from the outside, the harder it is for thoughts from the inside to break in. Or if we get bombarded by thoughts from the inside, the harder it is to pay attention to things from the outside. So a simple example of that is a panic attack, right? So if you're like in a safe place where there's nothing to be worried about, but you have a panic attack, all of this internal energy is dominating your mind and you cannot attend to the outside. if I'm at my anniversary dinner with my loved one and we're at a beautiful restaurant, but I am plagued by thoughts of stress about work or things like that, I cannot attend to the outside. So fundamentally, we as human beings have lost the ability to like attend to what we want to. Either we are bombarded by external stimuli, which is something that happens, by the way. So if you look at the internet and technology, what does technology do? It bombards you with external stimuli. And everyone, this is crazy. This is scary. There's this research field. There's a field of scientific research now around the attention marketplace. And what does that mean? Like you can like literally do a Google Scholar search for attention marketplace. You're going to see a ton of papers, journals, where people like, here is how to win in the attention marketplace. What is the prize in the attention marketplace? Your attention. Who are the competitors? Generally speaking, companies in the digital space. Everyone's competing for your attention. So when Google or Facebook or whatever, Instagram, Meta, Twitch, TikTok, whatever, news organizations, when they win, they're all fighting against each other. And one of them's going to come out on top. Who loses? You lose. Because now you are no longer in control of your attention. And if we think about our day, what's going on? We get bombarded by attention over and over and over and over again. Bombarded by stimuli. And so our thoughts are externally focused, right? That's why if you stop for a second and close your eyes, what are you going to think about? You're going to think about whatever you've been bombarded by. You may think a little bit about, I don't know, what you read on the news today. You're going to think about playing this video game. You're going to think about whatever show is like number one on Netflix right now. You're going to think about all these things. And here's the key thing. The more that you're thinking about those things, the less you are able to attend to what's on the inside. Your internal thoughts have no space. They have no room because all of these thoughts are coming from the outside. So what I'm going to teach y'all today is a simple meditation technique. It is a very simple meditation technique, and it is a very hard meditation technique. And if you really want to do this meditation technique, I highly recommend you do it under the guidance of an appropriate person. And we'll talk about how you can find that at the end. But the meditation technique is incredibly simple. And if you want to find purpose in life, this is what you should do. You should reach the end of thought. That's it. Very simple. Just reach the end of thought. Now, this is kind of a weird thing, right? So how do you reach the end of thought? It's very simple. Close your eyes, and thoughts will arise. And over time, the number of thoughts that arise will start to decrease. And the more that you kind of run out of steam, you will eventually reach the end of thought. And as you reach the end of thought, you will discover things about yourself. Now, this may sound kind of weird. You're like, what is this guy talking about? Well, actually, it's kind of weird, but we know this, okay? So think about when someone is directionless in life, what do they do that gives them direction, right? So have you heard about these people who like go find themselves? I'm on a journey to find myself. So I went on one such a journey. It wasn't what I was intending at the time, sort of. I was like, I'm going to go find myself in India. I'm going to go find myself by hiking through the Himalayas. I'm going to go find myself by hiking somewhere or going out into the wilderness and doing something extreme, right? I'm going to go find myself by like exploring the Arctic. And if you think about it, why do these kinds of things result in people finding themselves? And sometimes you may know these people. You may even long for this. Where you're like, this person was like one way, and then they went and they found themselves. And they come back with dreadlocks and like this deep look in their eyes and facial hair. And they're like physically more in shape. And they have this intensity and body odor that they didn't used to have. And now they have come back and they have found themselves. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Right? And they're different. How does that work? Like there has to be a scientific mechanism for that crap. Y'all get that? And what it is they reach the end of thought. That's like literally what happens. So they go and hike for, let's say, like days. And if you think about if you go on a hiking trip, what's happening? Your sensory input is going to go down, right? Like you're not on your phone 24/7 when you're hiking. And if you are on your phone 24/7 hiking, you're not going to find yourself. And so what happens is you hike for the first day and you'll notice this. You'll see that there's like a ton of like thoughts that come up. You think about this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Day 2 rolls around, day 3 rolls around, you're thinking about this, thinking about this. And then eventually you're done thinking about it. And then you're just like kind of like by yourself. And that's when you will hear that inner voice. So you see this as well in ashrams, right? So when you go and you meditate, what's the whole point of being in an ashram? The point of being in an ashram is to reduce your sensory input. That's why they're isolated and in the woods. Why do they want to reduce their sensory input? So they can hear what's on the inside. Really simple. It's not actually like any mystical kind of thing. It's like very, very simple. And so now that cell phones have entered ashrams, you don't have people finding themselves anymore. Right? Now meditation has become a big business where you can buy the right meditation pants. Like I can go get like these branded meditation pants. And if I get the branded meditation pants, that means that I'm a better meditator, right? Isn't that right? Isn't that why you do? Doesn't it give me +1 on all my meditation checks? If I wear the right meditation pants? And then I can get an Om tattooed on some part of my body, and that gives me a +2. If I get it tattooed on one of my chakras, then that gives me a +3. And then I can have a Rudraksh Mara, and that's going to give me a +4. All the stuff is coming to our merch store, by the way. Right? This is how I get all the buffs in meditation. This is what it's become. And now I'm going to use an app to meditate. And that's great because as soon as I finish meditating, oh, TikTok has a video for me. Fantastic. That's exactly what I was looking for. So reach the end of thought. Really, that's it. So there are some organizations that will do these 10-day silent meditation retreats. This is like a good example of like, you can, I mean, I wouldn't go hardcore. So you can just sit and wait for the end of thoughts to come. You know, I'd say like give that an hour, 2 or 3, or go hiking is another good example. Like go out into the wilderness in a safe way, right? So you don't want to like be like that into the wild guy and then like run into starvation and stuff, right? So you can like go hiking, prepare properly, make sure you have a GPS, make sure you have an emergency phone, things like that. Like you don't want to get yourself in trouble. And if you want to do an intense meditation retreat, like Vipassana is like a good example of an organization that does it. I hear mostly good things. It's like a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It's very hard, but you will find yourself. But simply, if you want to find your inner voice, reach the end of thought. Because once all of the stuff from the outside runs out of steam, then you'll hear the inner voice. Danana is saying, find myself, but I'm here. That's beautiful. I'm glad you've discovered that and you see the absurdity of what we're talking about. Not a meditation technique for Danana. She doesn't need it. Questions? King Krish Live is saying, so closing my eyes and waiting for the end of thought is the technique? Basically. You don't even have to close your eyes. Elder Hero 1 is asking, how can I be anywhere else but here? Seems like a silly question, but it's actually not a silly question. All you have to do is experience anxiety, and then you will discover how it's very easy to be anywhere else but here. Right? Worry is anywhere else but here. You'll know what I mean? Soupy, though, is saying, I feel like I'm never here, Smodge. Yeah, that's the problem. So we've stopped being here and we've started being everywhere else. Right? So if you go to a party and you spill a drink on yourself, You feel embarrassed, you go to the bathroom and you're cleaning it off. And what are you thinking about? Oh my God, what is everyone else out there thinking? Are they talking about me? Where are you? You're not in the bathroom, you're out there thinking about them. So Bellamito is asking a good question. What if someone has depression and thought loops? Do they ever end? So this is a good question. So one thing is, this is why I say that you should do these techniques under guidance. So I've had some patients who have wanted to go on serious meditation retreats to find themselves in the midst of a mental illness. I do not recommend that at all. You need to be mentally stable when you do this technique. So like I would say that if you have active illness of any kind, doesn't even mean mental. If you're like in heart failure, don't go hiking in the Himalayas for 10 days. Right? So this technique is not for the faint of heart. It's not something that should be done for a clinical improvement. It's actually very difficult to do. And if you find the appropriate guidance, do it safely. And if when you close, so like I don't recommend these kinds of techniques also in people who have negative thoughts that will overwhelm them. What if the end of thoughts change? Yeah, that's what you should go explore. That's the whole point. Yeah, so how do you find the appropriate guidance? So what I said is that there are meditation retreats, right? So I would go like on a retreat. And these things like the Vipassana retreats, like 10-day silent meditation retreats, are good examples of that. I think before you go on those retreats, you should probably get a medical clearance. So go talk to your doctor and just make sure that you're physically and mentally fit before you do something like that. What is an example of what one could find at the end? Zale ain't, so that's something you've got to find for yourself. Like, there's all kinds of weird stuff out there. Can you do it in public? Sure. It's just probably going to be harder. How important is silent meditation without practicing a technique? It's not that important. The thing about silence is that it allows you. So if you think about it, what is conversation, right? Conversation is going to be an input that will trigger thoughts. So the purpose of the silence is because they're like speed running it. So silent meditation retreat, I think, is really about speed running this technique. So Fallen Artorius is saying, do you have something more actionable we can do inside a room without going out to the mountains and doing stuff to find purpose? Yeah, so remember, what I told you to do is just find the end of thought. You don't have to be in the Himalayas or at a silent meditation retreat to do that. So what I would say, like, for sitting in a room, and that's the first thing. So I'll think about other techniques. This is actually why we're doing this stream. So now I know what y'all are looking for. I will think, do research, and see if I can come up with additional techniques. But the other thing is that this is a meditation technique you can do here and now. You can close your eyes and just one thought comes and wait for it to go. One thought comes and wait for it to go. One thought comes and wait for it to go. Don't observe it. Don't accept it. Don't do anything. Just like wait. Be patient. And the thoughts will come, and then you'll start to feel antsy. And then you'll start to get bored. And what is boredom? Boredom is a signal from your mind that our thought bank is getting low. Saying, oh my God, we're running out of things to think about. Let's go find something else. And there's panic. And what is the solution to boredom? Stimulation. And what happens when we get stimulated? We have plenty of thoughts. It's food for the mind. Thought is food for the mind, and the mind doesn't like to go hungry. And so we're gorging ourselves on social media, video games, TV shows, memes, whatever. just a straight diet of processed memes. And then the mind is always content. You are unhappy, but the mind is happy, right? You think about it for a second. That's the problem. Is that your life is falling apart, but your mind is happy. That's why you keep doing it. It's just like if someone is at an unhealthy weight and they keep eating or not eating, depending on which end of the spectrum you're on, right? It's because there's a part of us that wants satisfaction, and to hell with the rest of you. Like if you're anorexic and you're like, I'm not going to eat today, and then your body is like, we've got an arrhythmia and we've got electrolyte imbalances, and this is what you're doing is very threatening to your body. But you're like, no, I'm going to satisfy this thing no matter what. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're obese, medically obese, right? And you're satisfying your appetite, and to hell with everything else. This is what's happening to our mind. We've become mentally obese. And we just keep eating. Can you please suggest one or two specific books that were life-changing for you? So I'm going to do my best. Like, one of my bucket list things in 2023 is to try to put together a reading list for y'all. But the truth of the matter is that I don't think I've read a life-changing book. This is what's like so confusing for a lot of people, or unsatisfying, is that I've read a lot of great books, but I don't think life-changing comes from a book. I think there's some fantastic books out there, but and I'm sure that lives have been changed with books. It's just the challenge is that it's not like I read one book and I was like, man, now I like know everything that I need to know. Right? Like the whole point is that you read book after book after book after book after book after book after book, and then like each one gives you something. But the life-changing stuff is not from one book. It's like the synthesis of all the books. I've read all of Mistborn and stopped after Stormlight number 3. Oh, actually, if you want a life-changing book, like my favorite book of all time is Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. That's my favorite book. Yeah, so Tile Kerr is saying, for me, it was Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. I think those books exist. It's just there wasn't one for me, per se. Maybe Yoga, the Alpha and the Omega is close to that. But, I mean, it's... you know, I'll think about it. Let me think about it and see if I can get back to y'all. Anyway, so just a last reminder. So if you guys are interested, we've got a promotion running for our community on Discord right now. So if y'all are interested in giving coaching a shot, it's 2023. If y'all want to start the year off and get some help in terms of planning, goal setting, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. One of our good outcomes, by the way, is that we do see on average 58% increase in life purpose at about 12 weeks of coaching. So that's one of the actual outcomes that we shoot for. So our curriculum is kind of designed to help people figure out what they want. You don't have to travel to the Himalayas and stuff to figure out what you want, although I do recommend it. So, and it's only running for one day. Okay. So it's like one day for people who are a part of our community. It's not really for the general public. And so check it out. And if y'all want to give coaching a shot, you can try it risk-free for now. And yeah. And who are you going to raid? raid Miskiff? I'm already in therapy. Is this still for me? Could be. So it doesn't overlap, in my opinion, really with therapy at all. Like, it's the, not opposite of therapy, but it's, so just to give you all a quick example. So if you really think about the training that therapists receive, the training they receive is in pathology, right? For the most part. Now, I'm not saying that therapists can't help beyond pathology, but our formal training really isn't regulated based on that. So if you look at like the licensure, the exams that you have to take to become a licensed therapist in the EU, in the United States, they're not going to test you on, the majority of the test is not going to be, the competence is not going to be about how to find purpose in life. It's going to be about clinical things, ethical things, stuff like that, right? That's like, kind of makes sense. Like, how do you diagnose and treat illnesses? Now, a lot of therapists will specialize in things like finding purpose or meaning, but that's not what the profession is really designed for. And so coaching is really meant, honestly, as a complement to therapy. And the reason I got into coaching was actually, I was recommended by the chief of psychiatry at McLean Hospital, which is the number 1 or number 2 psychiatric hospital in the United States. And I was talking to him about my interests in the kind of work that I do, and he had gotten some feedback about some of my clinical work, and he's the one that recommended it to me. And so McLean Hospital actually started this thing called the Institute of Coaching. And that may sound kind of weird, but it was actually started by a psychologist who recognized that the direction that therapy is going, there's actually a different direction. And the founder of the Institute of Coaching was actually specialized in positive psychology, right? So there are therapists who will do this kind of thing, but coaching is really about, the way that I think about it is therapy is for people who are in -100 to 0. So if you think about, why do you go to a hospital? You don't go to a hospital to get healthy. You go to a hospital to resolve illness. And then if you think about physical health, where do you do physical health? Well, you do physical health at a swimming pool, at a gym, nutrition, at a grocery store, learning how to cook. So, right, there's -100 to 0, and then there's 0 to 100. And that's really what coaching is for. Yeah, so the JMOS is saying, wow, in Brazilian colleges, we study everything. I'm majoring in Gestalt therapy. That's fantastic. Quarter Jade, let's do it. Y'all want to raid Quarter Jade? Done. All right. Take care, y'all. Yeah, I would not recommend meditating after eating. Simple physiological reason for that. Simple physiological reason is, after you eat, your parasympathetic nervous system activates, reroutes blood flow from your peripheral limbs, skeletal muscle like arms and legs, and brain, and maximizes blood flow to your stomach, your intestines, and your liver. So this is also why, if you look at a lot of the more esoteric or serious meditators, they'll be on very restricted diets, or they'll fast. And why is that? It's because, food and meditation don't always mix. Take care, everybody.